If you've spent any time editing video, any type or kind of video, you know it's a discipline that's all about making choices, what to include, what to leave out, endless decisions about the constant flow of visuals, audio, graphics, and most importantly, effectively building a story that will engage your audience and keep them watching until the last frame of content is delivered. In that spirit, I get to welcome to Office Hours a friend of mine, Michael Yanovich, who's ACE, the American Cinema Editors Society Guild member. Most of you know that those initials have been around in Hollywood for a long time. Mike has a long list of credits on IMDb, like his current project, Waltzing with Brando, an interesting indie biopic about Marlon Brando that's starring Billy Zane. It's going to be occupying a lot of his time right now. He's also worked in TV shows like the 21st Annual Critics' Choice Awards, music videos for bands like Counting Crows, and even spent a stint as a highly trusted collaborator of noted Las Vegas headlining magician Chris Angel. So yes, he probably knows all those stunning illusions and how they are crafted, but he is not going to tell us, so don't even ask. As Mike reminded me, this is very early for him to be up and functioning, but I still get to welcome to our show Michael Yanovich. Hi, Mike. How are you this morning?
Hey, Bill. How's it going? It's ridiculously early, though. Yeah.
Like a lot of editors I know, you spend long hours, you get caught up in things, and overnight. It's great to have you here this morning.
Nice.
When I was reading your bio, I've known you for a while, but I didn't know you were born in Colombia. Is that true?
It is true. We moved to the U.S. when I was about 13 months old, so I grew up in the U.S.
Okay.
And I've been a citizen here a long time, but I was born there. My family's from there, and yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. You've worked so many projects over the years. Was there an early turning point in your career when you realized that the editor's chair was the right place for you?
Yeah. I knew I started editing for my friends. We just shot stuff in high school on VHS tape, way back when. We just shot whatever we could. We shot skits. We shot little pieces. They were all live to tape because we didn't know how to edit. And I think my senior year of high school, we spent the summer, my friends and I, shooting a superhero spoof. And on VHS, didn't know how to edit it because now we had different scenes. And all of a sudden in college, I met some friends who got into editing, and we learned how we'd have VHS systems. And for one of the guys in the superhero spoof got married, we decided to edit it for his bachelor party. And that was my intro to editing. And then after college, I moved to Miami, smaller market than LA, where I am now. And I did everything: camera work, PA work, editing. I learned Avid right around then, and once I started playing with the Avid, everything changed. And
so you were one of the early Avid editors. You made a transition at some point. What was it that you loved about Avid, and what was kind of the changeover for different systems for you like?
So I heard about Avid in college, never seen it. I'd heard rumors you could edit. This was 92 when I graduated, and I took a 3-day Avid class in New York. I did not know how to edit. Everyone there was a pro editor. I was a guy who just graduated college who knew computers. So I picked up the software really quick. And once I moved to Florida, any job I could get, I would say, hey, I know Avid. If you need me to digitize your footage, let me know. And there was no competition. Nobody, Avids were $200,000 or 3 or 4 in town. Very few people knew how to use them. And yeah, you have to take advantage of opportunities like that. So it's not that I loved Avid over the other competing systems. There really were no competing systems. And as they came out, yeah, no competing NLEs. There were a couple, but I think I played with the iMix Cube or something like that was the other system that was around then that I knew one client who had. And once you learn how to use one system, learning another is relatively straightforward.
So you've been in your career through this explosion of editing being a very niche thing that only people who knew how to use these high-end systems were able to do effectively, into the world where editing seems to be just lingua franca in the modern era, and everybody seems to be an editor now. You've done also a lot of different genres. I was fascinated about this as I was reading your CV. You've done horror, you've done drama, corporate, music video, and so on and so forth. Do you have a favorite genre of editing, or do you subscribe to the idea that a quality editor can really find the spine of the story regardless of what the form or subject is?
Yeah, you better be flexible. You better be able to do a lot of different kind of projects. I always wanted to get into movies, and it took me a long time to break into feature films. It's, no contacts, no relations in the industry. So I started off doing whatever I could. And in Miami, that was a lot of music videos and turned into TV shows, regional spots, commercials. And then when I went to LA eventually, it happened to be around the beginning of reality TV, and I stumbled into it. It's a great genre to work in. It's really editor dependent. I learned a huge amount. I don't really watch it for the most part. So, but once you get in, it's hard to break out. So you're kind of stuck there for a while. And it's a wonderful career if you can manage it. It was very good to me for a long time, but it was time to leave. So I had to find a way to get into features, and that is my favorite. Within features, I like a lot of different range of material, but.
Well, that to me is fascinating, because I think there are a lot of editors. I mean, reality and that kind of build a story out of disparate parts that came in. You don't know what you're getting, but you have to figure out a thread and make it happen. It sounds like you felt that was really good training, but at some point you just got tired of doing that. Am I right about that?
Yeah, exactly. And hats off to people who can pull it off. It's a lot of work. And I kind of was thrown into the deep end, and I had a lot of really good people around me who showed me the ropes, because you're not going to figure it out on your own. You have story producers who really go through the footage. They're the unsung heroes in reality. They're there on set when it's shot. They are logging all the footage. They're finding the story beats that are going to work throughout a whole episode. And then after they do their work, it goes to the editors already pared down. So now you have to take the pared down material and the story arc and figure out how you're going to tell it. And you have a team of people you're doing that with. It's never going to be one editor doing the whole show. It's way too much work.
From the very early days I was an editor, people just talked to me over and over about story. I mean, you're not operating a machine to just do edits. You're always looking for that thread that keeps people engaged. Can you tell me about your thought process as you were coming out of these kind of more prosaic kinds of just build the set of images and things like that, to getting into that narrative storytelling and figuring out what's important to get that done right?
Yeah, when I started, again, because I had no editorial training, I was we called a BPM, a button pushing monkey. I would sit in the chair, clients behind me telling me what to do. And I'd say, sure, I didn't know that's not editing. That's just pushing buttons. But as I did that in commercials, especially in short documentaries, I would have ideas, and I eventually started bringing them up to the producers or the directors sitting behind me. And it became much more engaging, and I realized, oh, you can do this as an editor. You can put in your thoughts, and the clients loved it because they had a sounding board to work with. So this was all very organic for me, kind of figuring out you can be part of the conversation to help tell a story as succinctly as possible, as engagingly as possible. And eventually, when they trust you, they leave you to do it on your own. But it has to be story first. And it's all different. Depends on what you were, not so much in a music video, unless it's a music video with a story in there, which the Counting Crows project I did had one. In a documentary, you're very story focused and you got to get the information right. In reality TV, you're very macroscopic. You're working on maybe one act of a 6-act show, or you're working on a couple of scenes, and you have to, if you're going to change the story, you got to run it by your story producer because they know the whole arc. I may only work on 1 or 2 acts of an entire episode, and I'll have 2 or 3 other editors working on the other acts. So your story has to work together. Hey, I don't like this beat here. I'm going to take it out. Oh, no, we need it because it sets up something 2 acts further down the road. In movies, you'll have a story from your script, and now you're working on telling the story well. Is it told in the correct order? Do you need to tell it linearly? Do you want to jump around? And you also have to focus on performance at that point. Performance in films is crucial.
I'd like to talk a little bit about relationships on set, in the edit suite, and things like that. In most narrative films that I've heard of course, the director is the final word on how things get assembled. But that's a very unique relationship working between director and editor. Talk to me a little bit about what skills you bring to the table, and just anybody who aspires to work in that kind of world should bring to the table to be a good collaborator.
In features, it's the director. In Television is usually the producer who's going to have that kind of final word, especially in reality TV or in scripted TV, which I've not done very much of. You're going to work with the director for a week or two for their cut, and then it goes to the producers. In a film, the director's there till the end. But it's the same as if you're working with any client, be it commercials, music videos, it doesn't matter. You have to be a partner, someone who has their back, someone they can trust. So if I'm in a screening with the director and a bunch of producers, the director wanted to try something and it's not really working and the producers are not thrilled, the worst thing you can do is point the finger at the director. It's their fault. You don't want to do that. You wait till the producers leave and you and the director are alone and you talk it out. And hopefully you're working with a director who is into a two-way conversation. Not all of them want to listen, but the good ones, it's very much a creative partnership, and you have to be able to be on, hey, we'll try your idea. This is not working. My favorite button in any edit system is the duplicate button, because you can take your cut and dupe it and do a completely different version without breaking the first version. Couldn't do that on VHS or on film, when you were cutting on film, but on NLEs, you can have 2-3 versions running at the same time and really compare the difference. And you have to be able to communicate honestly with your director or whoever the creative person you're working with is. And they need to know they can trust you, but that you have to be able to disagree with them, because you have to be able to say, I don't think this is working.
Can you talk a little bit about your process in terms of where do you start? Let's say that you've been hired to work on a project. Is the first thing you want to do have meetings? Is the first thing you want to do figure out what that overall scope of the project is? And then where do you start when you're starting to build your timelines, or at least get kind of a rough cut done? Do you think in terms of purely the visuals? Do you incorporate temp tracks and audio and things like that? How do you kind of start to assemble your story?
Want to focus on TV, on music videos, or features? Because they are different processes for all three.
That's great. People, I think, want to know about that. So let's start with when did you start? Was it on the music video stuff that you had to kind of pay attention to the audio stuff?
Sure, music videos early in my career, and I still do them now and then. They're not as ubiquitous as they used to be. Usually, especially the low budget ones, are shooting for one day, maybe two. You're going to get the footage, you're going to load it in, and you have to know the song by the time you're going to really know the song at the end of an edit. But you need to be familiar with it at the beginning. And it's a matter of looking at the footage and kind of coming up with a plan of how much did they shoot? Do they have multiple locations? Do they have multiple concepts? Or are you trying to milk one location and they're just singing and dancing and that's all you got? I did Oye Como Va, the music video for Tito Puente Jr. They did a cover of that famous song. And it was one location, the guy singing, dancing, his dad in the back playing the timbales, and some girls dancing. That's it. So at that point, you just have to make that last for the 3.5 minutes of the song. For a film, you're going to come in knowing the script. You're going to talk to the director. Once production starts, you are not going to hear from anybody very much. You're going to talk to your DIT and your assistant editor, make sure things are going well. But it's amazing. You get your first day of dailies, which is usually day 2 or 3 of the production being shot, and they're on set all day. They don't have time to talk to the editor. So you're a couple of days behind. Oh boy, could you guys pick up this shot once you start playing with the footage? No, they're done with that location. They've moved on. So you're going to get your footage for the first day of shooting, and you just start going scene by scene and telling it. And you're not always going to have all the information you need to make the right decisions at that point. So one day I got a scene that first day of shooting was on a golf course. Scene was in the middle of the film, and it's kind of a big turning point between the protagonist and the antagonist. And they played it creatively so many different ways. There were multiple approaches to the performances, and I didn't know how the director wanted to cut it, because you could take it in a very serious, intense, dark way. It could be lighthearted. It could be subtle. Maybe the bad guy is hinting at what they're going to do, but not really telling you, or they could be straight out and tell you exactly. So I kind of roughed it in and put a locator on it, come back to this scene. Once I'd cut the rest of the film and I had a story arc and I could see what the performances were going on, then it made sense. Now I know how to cut this scene. So you had to wait until most of the film was shot and you'd done a rough edit for the whole thing before you got there. When I spoke to the director about it, he was thinking the same thing when he shot it. He didn't know how it was going to play at that point in the film. So that's part
so
of
you actually found the story in the footage by just being sensitive to what had been shot out there and paying attention to what you felt you could do with it.
Yes. You have to. It's all performances. In narrative storytelling, performance, story's key, but the performances have to sell. The performance is what brings something to life. So you're looking for what's the best way to get this character and their thought process across.
Does that affect, have you been in circumstances where you can see a direction, but the coverage just isn't there to let you take a path that you might be interested in taking?
Yeah, all the time.
So it's a process of you never know what you're going to get, and you have to build it out of what you actually have.
Yes.
And that's probably one of the things that separates a beginning editor from an experienced editor is to know when you don't have something to pursue a line.
And you do the best you can. And sometimes you call the director or email them and say, hey, I'm missing something here. Maybe you caught something they missed entirely. And they will be able to pick up a couple of shots for you. Or maybe they have a plan already and they know how they're going to handle this. In which case, great. It's okay to ask, what were you thinking when you were shooting this so I can edit it to match your vision? I prefer to do the first pass on my own. Even if I get it completely wrong, I don't want to be influenced by, I'll look to see the director's favorite take. You'll get a list. They like these takes. It may be a great take on the moment. Does it work in the way you're editing the scene? That's not necessarily the same thing. So I want to do a first pass on my own. But if there are problems, you're going to reach out to the director and say, what are you thinking in this moment? And I've gotten scenes completely wrong until I hear back from the director later.
That's interesting. I'm interested in the Critics' Choice Award credit here. That's a different kind of environment to work in. You're talking up to this point about kind of one-on-one in building your thing. That's a very collaborative. You're part of a huge team. What's different about that in terms of your approach to sitting at the table?
Editing is relationships with people and being able to. So I used to think editing was a half technical, being able to push the right buttons, and half creative. And I've since it's a third technical, a third creative, and a third working with people. The politics, the being able to work with clients is crucial. So I'm part of a group of friends. Patrick Duty is a producer. I've known him since the beginning of his career, beginning of my career. We've been friends 25 years at least. And he does a lot of live shows, a lot of live to tape shows, and Critics' Choice being one of them. And I do a bunch with them. So I will get they usually shoot 3-4 cameras. They get audience coverage, and I will get this 2.5 to 3 hour long edit. And the producer, it may be Patrick. Usually it's Paul Flattery he works with, who's been in the industry forever and is amazing. We'll do a paper cut down. You'll have a transcript, everything. We're going to lose this, lose that, and I have to shape the show based on what they need to get it down in time. And that's just taking 4 cameras and really doing a polished edit, because they're gonna do live to tape, and they'll have a line cut for you. But you're going to need to go into the ISOs to mix it between the line cut and the ISOs to clean up the show a bit. I hope I'm being coherent, because I'm still not quite awake.
You're totally coherent, and I'm actually fascinated, and I think the audience will be too. What we're seeing is the reality in the chair in Los Angeles or in New York or Chicago or even the smaller markets in terms of this is how it really works. This is what a working editor sitting in the chair day after day, week after week, month after month faces. All these different projects coming through, and you having to make good decisions to serve the story in all of those respects. So it must have been a little weird that the stuff you did with Chris Angel. I've talked to you a little bit about that in the past, but that is a whole different kind of a thing. You've got now the veil between the audience and the practitioner, and you're having to explain you're having to show what's going on without revealing what's going on. Was there anything special about that you can articulate for us?
In addition to editing, you have to have a life, right? You have to have a life outside of your job. I do a lot of hobbies. I pick up hobbies all the time. At that time, I picked up, there's a building in Los Angeles called the Magic Castle. I got in as a private club. It took me 3 years from moving here to find somebody to get me in as a guest. I fell in love with the place. And to be a member there, you could be an associate member. A lot of film and TV industry people, or a magician member. which case you didn't have to be a pro, but you had to learn the basics and pass an audition. And I decided to do that. And I spent a year,
Ooh.
year and a half doing that. Started doing magic in the edit bays for my friends, when we were all working in person in between. And all of a sudden I get a call from somebody. I'd just come back from my honeymoon and he says, "Hey, I'm working on this magic show with this guy, Chris Angel. It was season 1. I knew who he was from the magic community, but he hadn't broken out into the public consciousness yet. And they needed an editor. And I went in for a couple of weeks to help them out and knew enough magic to know how to present it on camera. You have the coverage, but how are you going to tell the story in a way to make it engaging?" And that ended up me turning into the lead editor and co-directing a lot of episodes with him. So I'd be able to go out for the big sets that he was on camera and couldn't tell the cameras what to do because, he's on screen. I was able to make sure we got the footage we needed to bring into to editorial. But yeah, the key is knowing how to engage an audience, which you have to do as a magician, and having that skill set on this TV show was a perfect blending of passions. I also play music, so doing music videos is another blending that works really well for me. So if you can bring your passion into your job, it's a great way to find a niche you're going to be really good in.
I think that's fabulous. I also think it's fabulous because, a lot of us get obsessive about, I have to work 20 hours a day doing this. And what you're articulating here is that the things you do outside of sitting in the chair and editing also can broaden you as a human being. And at some point, that may turn out to be critical to be able to tell a story in your editing. Let's get to a couple of questions, then we can come back. I got a few more things to talk about. But, Guy, what's our first question for Mike?
We've got one in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, what do you think it will take for Avid to break its grip on high-end feature editing? Is Resolve rapidly catching up?
What's your view out there?
Well, Avid is at this point, my number 2. I moved personally, and I'm one of the few. I switched to Final Cut years ago, and I still know Avid. I still do Avid jobs. I've done about 5 or 6 feature films on Final Cut now. Premiere's trying to make inroads. I like a lot of what Adobe does. I'm personally not a fan of Premiere. Blackmagic is, I know people who really love it. I respect what they do. It's great. Anything I do in Final Cut goes to Resolve for color because that's where you want the color to be done. And studios are slow to change. So the big studios, they have a workflow they like. They don't like surprises. They don't like change. Everyone in the industry knows how to work it. So when I do Final Cut, I have to convince them. It was really hard the first time, a little less hard the second time. I now have 5 films I can point to and say, these are all done on Final Cut. We're not breaking any new ground. It's okay. It will save you time and money. For the indie film market, it's been fantastic. For big studios, it's going to be a while before they leave Avid.
Yeah, I think I've heard that over and over again, too. Let's go to our next question.
Got one in from Raj Shandil in Los Angeles, California, and he asks, with the type of edits you have worked on, you picked a lot of music to score your edits. How do you think of music when editing?
Music is so important. I'm a believer that, and I say this as a picture editor, that music or audio in general is 51% of the finished product. So it is so important. When editing a film, I try to edit scenes without music for as long as I can. I want to get in there and get the scene to work the best way possible without any music, because music will make it so much better. And music will take a mediocre edit and make it good. I'd rather have a really good or really great edit and then enhance it with the music. But if you put music in early, it can be a crutch. So once you get the edit really clean and polished, then I'm going to find temp score. For movies, I'm looking and I'm taking from other movies. I'm throwing in music that works. I have a good ear for it. I'm usually able to find it. But I'll go in with 15 to 20 different soundtracks in the genre I'm working in. So for Waltzing with Brando, I had a lot of rom-com stuff, a lot of light dramedy stuff. For the horror film I just did, I had a lot of horror soundtracks. At the end, it's all going to be replaced by a composer. Some composers want to use your music as a guide. Some want you to throw it all away and they're going to start from scratch. But for the editing process, it's crucial you have good music in there.
Perfect. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana asks, is the blink of the audience eye the enter key to the audience's brain, as Walter Murch says? What have you discovered by studying another editor's work?
Oh, man. I'm not a shill for this. I've got the book down here, The Art of the Cut, Volume 2. I'm a big fan of these. That's Steve Hullfish's work. So, Steve, I love your work. I don't get anything from pitching this. It is, he does a lot of conversations with editors.
He does. They're fabulous.
Yeah, they're great. You absolutely learn. I've read Walter Murch's books. You will learn a lot learning from other editors. And if you're in the room with them, if you're collaborating with them, I've had editors come to screenings I'm doing. If we're doing a preview screening of a film and I can get some high-end editors I know to come as a favor and give me notes, I'm going to listen to them. The worst thing you can do, by the way, in this chair is be defensive, which is you show an edit and people are like, well, I put hours into this. No, this is right. This is how we should do it. It's the worst thing you can do. You have to learn to listen to other people because you're too close to it by the time you're showing it to someone. So yes,
amen.
From other editors, conversations with them, getting notes, and put your ego at the door. Be open to getting notes and learning from other people.
Yeah, the phrase "kill your babies" comes to mind. I think every editor has been in the circumstance where I just feel like I did this really well, and you don't want to lose it, but maybe losing that is exactly what this piece needs. And so it's hard to learn to be humble like that. But boy, that certainly resonates.
Early, and hopefully get to the point where you're able to see your babies that you love and you can kill it yourself. Because sometimes you're looking at this, hey, I love this, but it doesn't work in the context of the bigger story. You have to be able to do that.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles, California asks, what is your overall editing philosophy?
Ooh, there's
What's
a
the
big
meaning
question.
of life? I don't know how to answer that. Every project's going to be different, and you have to look at the project and see what's unique about it and find the moments that shine.
Maybe that's the philosophy. What does this need?
Yeah, I will go with that because I don't have a better answer than that.
Next question.
Next one in from Raj Shandil in Los Angeles, California. Apologies for the barking dogs. The music video, Humankind Big Dawgs,
Wait, the what?
has gone viral for the track, but even more for the video. Have you seen this video? Thoughts on this edit? And the lyrics are not safe.
I don't think I've seen it. My kids have probably seen it, but I can't comment on something I have not seen.
What about, do you get content? Have you ever had a job come in where the content, you're just iffy about whether or not you want to approach this particular type of content and resigned or said, no, thank you?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Now, it depends. Do you have other job offers? Are you busy? Are you doing okay? Or do you need work right now? Because as a freelancer, it's feast and famine, right? You're not always going to be in a position where you're comfortable saying, hey, maybe I'll do this, but I won't put my name on it. I'm going to ask them not to use my name in the credit. I don't do a lot of those. But I've turned down projects that I absolutely don't believe in. Sure.
Absolutely.
And I've done projects that I don't care about. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you need to pay your bills. And the key when you go in to do those is you have to be a pro and do them well. I'm going to give an example. Very early when I moved to LA, I got a job doing one of those cheesy TV commercials for a used car lot in Orange County. But you know what? I went in and I put on my big boy hat and I did it as a professional and I did the best I could. And the director liked me. And I didn't know this, directs a lot of big TV shows. And he's the one who got me from editing, used car lot ads to doing TV shows because he liked my work as a professional on this cheesy ad that I didn't want anything to do with. I didn't let that show. He changed my career. I'm still friends with the guy. It's been 25 years. So if you go in with that attitude, even on jobs you don't want to do, be a professional and do your best.
Young editors, are you listening? This is the voice of experience. You never know when that opportunity is going to show up. Take them all seriously. Let's go to the next question.
Next one in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. And he asks, the editor's work disappears as a function of their craft. What film or story has inspired you to become a better editor?
So many. Oh, I can talk some of my favorite movies. Brazil is one. I really like a lot of Terry Gilliam's work. a lot of Brian De Palma. Brian De Palma, when I was a teenager, his movies taught me, oh, you can be a little weird in these films and make some really cool stuff. So I think some of his earlier work just changed how I looked at film as a teenager. Him and Terry Gilliam's work, like Brazil, 12 Monkeys. I love that kind of stuff. I love stuff that's a little out there. That's my personal preference. Something a little bit strange. So those kind of films. Oh,
so
you know what? A great way to learn to edit this kind of stuff. If you see scenes you really like, watch it. You know, if you're at home and you got your rewind button, turn off the audio. Watch stuff with the audio off. If you're sitting in a bar and there's a TV on and there's a movie on the TV and they have the sound turned off, you can learn a lot by watching. As important as audio is, you'll learn a lot by watching something with the sound turned off. Watch it 2 or 3 times. How do they put that together? It's I learned a lot that way.
Speaking of horror and things like that, and De Palma, what's different about a horror pace or a horror kind of shock thing versus the kind of traditional just tell the story editing? Are there differences that you can identify?
Yeah, there's a lot of genres of horror. There's a lot of styles. Absolutely. But you're going to slow things down for scary scenes. You can't rush through those. You have to let them draw out. You have to let the pace and the anticipation. And horror is all anticipation. You know, you can't have a jump scare without the quiet part ahead of time. You want to see the best jump scare ever done on any film ever. It's in The Exorcist 3. And anyone who's seen the movie, I saw that in the theater. It was packed, and the entire theater was levitating 10 feet above their chairs because it was so scary. This moment was so brilliantly crafted, and look at the pacing of it. So it's the hospital scene in Exorcist 3. Watch it with the lights off and the sound up, and it's terrifying. But then watch it again. Turn the sound off and just watch how they do the pacing. Watch it again with your eyes closed but the sound on, and listen to all the audio they're using to really, the sound design is crucial as well. So it's going to be slower pacing, intentional sound design, and just building the drama up.
That's so resonant with me. I was just talking to one of the lead narrators. I'm trying to do more and more audio books, and Scott Brick, one of the finest narrators out there, told me, you get into something serious, slow down, slow down, slow down. Let the audience anticipate. And you're saying the same thing in visual work. It's not always rushing to the explosion. It's what happens before it. I think that's brilliant.
Rushing for action films, but not for horror.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, appropriate when it's time. Next question.
Got one in from Robert Shoji in Los Angeles, California, and he asks, what makes your editing work more difficult?
Okay, it's time to dish.
I'm going to be vague, but poor coverage, lack of coverage. I won't say the show, but I did a reality show long ago where the producer came into me after my first cut, was mad that I'd left all this stuff out that they were talking about that wasn't shown. And I said, you don't have the footage. You guys never shot B-roll of this. B-roll is for reality TV is a lifesaver. They were talking about, this was a wedding planning show of some sort. They're talking about the DJ being a big deal and the invitations. Like, you guys never shot footage of the DJ or the invitations. So producers who are not shooting the B-roll or the coverage you need, that makes my job much more difficult. Clients who don't want to listen, clients who think they're 100% right, and sometimes you're not going to talk them out of it. You just have to do what they want. But you can make it better. You have to do it. It's the clients. You have to learn as the editor, especially if you have a director or producer behind you. This is not your project. I got to turn Do Not Disturb back on because that should not have come through.
Oh, we didn't hear anything or see anything, so I'm sorry it's distracting you, but we're okay with that.
Just turn it off. But sometimes you have to let your ego go and just do exactly what the client wants. And you have to know when that is time to do it and when you can actually fight back.
Next question.
Next one in from Raj in Los Angeles, California, and he asks, how was it working for Jimmy Kimmel for 5 years?
I didn't work for Jimmy Kimmel for 5 years.
So it was incredibly boring because it didn't happen.
I don't know where that. No, I've never. have worked with him very briefly, but not in an editorial way. And I think I've met him for 30 seconds. So no comment because not me.
One of those internet discrepancies out there. There's probably something
I'm
on
curious
your...
where that came from. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Next question.
Maybe the AI is hallucinating. Douglas Carmichael, when editing to music, do you usually work intuitively to the music or mark hit points in the NLA for specific points in the music?
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'll do both. Again, I'm a musician. I play guitar, I play drums, I mess around on keyboard. So I love music. And it's one of my strong suits as an editor is working with music.
When do you cut on march and when do you cut in jazz, anticipating and lagging and doing all those things that make music so rich?
It's such a... Am I doing this as a quick temp score thing, or am I laying something down that's going to be the final piece of music? I'm going to put a lot more care, depending on the schedule and the time I have, because you're always looking at the clock. Do I have time to really dive into this music and play with it, or am I just putting in a guide track for the composer that's all going to be replaced? I'll use markers now and then, but I'm really good with listening to the rhythm. Sometimes, the old trick of if you're doing an edit, sliding one track of music under the other and extending it so you can make sure the rhythm's lined up and then you get rid of the overlap. But I've got a good innate sense of rhythm and I don't do that unless I absolutely have to. So
let's go to one more question.
Got one in from John Schneider in Reno, Nevada, and he asks, where do you go to find inspiration for new ideas?
Your TV set. There's so much to watch. There's so much.
And I also see from your feed, you go to a lot of movies and not necessarily the blockbusters that are out there. I see a lot of posts from you about, I went to see this. And I'm going, I haven't even heard of that. It must be some small film in Los Angeles or something like that that's just breaking. Do you like doing that, looking at all the stuff?
I like, when I go to a movie, I like checking. Look, the movie industry is in rough shape right now. We all know it. And it's up to us if we want to fix it. I mean, there's a lot we can blame on the studios, don't get me wrong. But if we want movies to do well, we have to go see them. So now I got one of those theater movie passes where you pay X amount a month and you go to 2-3 movies a week for free as part of your payment. And I like taking advantage of that. So if it's 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, I got nothing to do, what's playing? And I'll go see a movie. And I don't watch trailers until after I've seen the film. So I go to a lot of these movies either based on friend recommendations or Rotten Tomato scores, or I will go in blind. I won't know the genre sometimes. And I think it's a great way to see a film. Worst case scenario, you're in the dark 2 hours in a movie you don't love. You can always leave. But yeah, I like seeing indie films. I like seeing a lot of indie horror films. I have a huge range of films I like, but I'm a horror fan. So they just had Oddity. This is this amazing little film that just came out that very few people know about in the mainstream world, but it's kind of taken the horror world by storm, and I had to make sure I caught that in the big screen.
So you mentioned a bit ago that, of course, Hollywood has been disrupted over the course of these strikes and things like that for the last at least 2 or 3 years, if not a little more than that. What's your sense of the marketplace, and are things coming back a little bit? Is it still really iffy out there? What's your thought?
Very iffy. Unscripted TV is in bad shape in LA right now. They're making very little. They move post overseas for a lot of it, is what I'm hearing. And it's not something I work in actively anymore. So, but I know a lot of my friends from that world are out of work. Feature films are very slow. So we had the actor-writer strike last year. We had negotiations for IATSE and the Teamsters, which have just gotten signed. They're all done. So my agent says things are picking up. I'm hearing things are picking up. I don't think it's going to be what it was 2-3 years ago when it was nonstop work everywhere. But I think it's going to pick up more than it is now. I don't know. At some point, they have to make content, right? All these streaming services are trying to find ways to be profitable. At some point, they have to make content or people are not going to watch. So I don't think the industry is dead, but it's certainly slower than it has been in a long time.
And I noticed that you, among my friends, are one of the people who were kind of online early. You didn't just go to the cubicle in the high-rise building where the editing for that show was done consistently. Did that start for you kind of as the pandemic hit, or were you thinking about doing remote kind of collaboration before that?
First time I did remote collaboration was on Chris Angel Mindfreak. And that was, I don't know, maybe 10 years, 15 years ago that we did that. So we had an issue where we were in LA and Chris is in Vegas. And he was getting his Cirque du Soleil show set up and he was shooting in Vegas. So we tried moving editorial in Vegas for season 2. And Vegas does not have enough editors to do this. And we didn't have the budget to convince enough editors to come from LA to do it. So eventually, about a month in, I went to Chris and to the producers and I said, if we stay here in Vegas with the editors we have who are great, but not enough of them, we won't make air. We have to go back to LA. So now Chris was flying back and forth, so it's an hour-long flight, but he's flying back and forth between Vegas and LA Chris was very involved with his edits and he really knew how to present himself and the magic on screen really well. So I will give him that. So he was very involved and was in LA all the time. And eventually this isn't going to work. So we hired an engineer. I don't know where they found him, but he had a whole system rigged where I'd have the Avid in LA and Chris could see the edit in Vegas. And we'd be on a phone call on speakerphone. So this is not like Zoom where you're sharing your screen. He could see our monitors, but we had to be on the phone to do notes. And that worked really well. So that was my first remote editing experience. And it was surprisingly good. For the time, it was great.
Nice. Next question.
Next one in from Robert Shoji, and he asks, can you tell us the practical things you have learned to make an editing job go more smoothly?
At some point they become innate and you don't think about them. What I said earlier, be open to criticism. I can't tell you how important that is because it bears repeating. If you're not open to criticism, or notes or change, if you are precious about your edit, it will not go smoothly. Second, know your craft. Know that whatever software you're working in doesn't matter. You have to know your software. If the client's asking for something, you can't stop and think, how do I do that? Especially if they're right behind you. If you're working on your own, if they're giving you notes and you have 2 days to put it together on your own, you're fine. You can learn. I have Googled when I'm working on it. I did my first premiere job. I had plenty of time. How do I do this? I don't know. I'm going to go Google it. So, but know your system, know your craft, and be open to criticism.
There you go. Next question.
Got one in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. And he asks, if you were to send someone to college tomorrow to become an editor, would you tell them to take a computer science course, e.g. programming, or an art history course, assuming you had to choose just one?
Between those two, art history. I don't know how to program. I can't code at all. And I got into computers early and I was playing around with BASIC, but I never moved past that. I don't know how to code. You have to know how to use a computer for today's editing. You don't need to know how to program. If you have basic tech support, like I'm having trouble relinking to this media, if you're on a bigger project, you send it to your assistant editor. If you're on a smaller project and can solve it yourself, great. Be very good at your Google Foo, so you can look up answers to questions and have a team of people around you could ask questions to. I didn't go to film school. I did go to college, and I think that general broad education is a good thing to have because you're going to draw on those experiences wherever you are, including in your edit work.
Have you thought much about how AI is going to impact this industry in the future? I know a lot of things from machine learning will make some of the rote tasks a whole lot easier, but anything else you can see on the horizon?
For the Brando movie, we used AI audio quite a bit for the offline edit. So there's, I can't talk too much about the film. It has not been released yet. We're still finishing it. But it's based on a true story from an architect who worked with Brando for years. And the architect is played by John Heder from Napoleon Dynamite. A lot of you will know him. And there's a lot of narration through the story because it's based on the architect's book. And here's where we are. Here's what's going on. That narration changed a lot. So we can either, in old days, I would record it myself. And if we're changing dialogue in a scene, which happens all the time, and then you re-record it later in ADR where you get your actors in and they record your new dialogue, it would all sound like me or people in the office. We ended up using AI voices to mimic the actors much closer. So while we're doing the edit, it wasn't as distracting. Performances aren't great, but it helped with the edit. And in the end, we replaced it all with the actual actors. But as a tool during your offline edit, it's an amazingly powerful tool. As far as the road tasks, yeah, I think Michael Cioni was talking about automatic logging as new software he's putting out, which looks amazing. I don't foresee a day where AI is looking at performances and the stuff that really needs humanity and putting it together in a way that is convincing or interesting or more than anything basic. I could be wrong, but I'm not worried about that at this point.
No, it's interesting. I remember talking to one of the directors that I know about what they're doing in terms of coverage, and he was talking, I think, about Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, the movie, and I was just astonished at how, yes, they would shoot what was on the page, but then because of those actors, because of TNFA and things like that, they would do 10, 12, 15 alts with all sorts of different, just come up with something. Yeah. And then having to manage all that in post became, I would guess, more complex than on a normal film where you just got coverage of scene 105, and how many takes do you have of that? Are you seeing more density in terms of alt takes and coverage and things like that now that we've gone away from film where you had to load a 12-minute reel over?
That kind of improv will usually happen in comedies, and Tina Fey's background is in improv.
There you go.
A friend of mine cut a lot of movies for Judd Apatow for years. They would shoot, and my wife had worked in those as well. They would shoot a million different takes. They're all comedians. They're coming up with lines on the spot. They're being fed lines from Judd Apatow. They're being fed lines from producers. Those films are usually done in Avid, and they have the script sync, and the assistants will spend days making sure every single take is somehow represented on the script sync. I don't know how that works, but I know they use it. So you will see that a lot in comedies, not so much in dramas. There'll be some variation in dramas. And that's part of it. As an editor, you need to know your footage. You need to find time to watch every frame. And whether you do it before you edit or after, you need to know your footage. And if there's alt takes, you need to be aware of them. And I can see AI being used in that regard somehow, organizing the variations. And in Final Cut, I would use auditions quite a bit. It's one thing Final Cut has that doesn't really exist in Avid or Premiere that I'm aware of, where I can have a line here. I saw them talk about Whiskey Tango Foxtrot early on. I saw the editor talk about this, where they have a funny line, and you can have an audition where you literally drop down the menu and swap between 10 or 15 different versions that adjust your edit subtly, and it's an amazing feature in Final Cut. I use it all the time, even if it's the same line from the performer. It's read to which take do I like better? Do I like this one or do I like that one? I'll have them both in, and I can show them both to the director by flipping the switch. So yeah, you need to know your footage and be ready for that.
Next question.
Next one in is Guy Cochran. That's me in Seattle, Washington. And I ask, what's the worst horror story you can think of that happened in the edit bay?
We love disasters.
I think I'm living it now. Not kidding. No, not now. Now, this project I'm working on. I'm helping out on a documentary that I'm not going to name. It's a great documentary, but it's a passion project that has grown in scope, and there was not a budget for it. Everyone's volunteering their time or doing deferred payment, and there's no assistant editor. Media management has been a technical nightmare, and I had to bring in a heavy hitter to help us out, because now that we have locked picture, getting it to link properly and sending it to Resolve, I've had no issues doing this on any of the films I've cut. This documentary, so many hands have been on it, where, hey, I've got 2 months to help you out. Hey, I've got 3 months to help you out. And there were so many issues with the media management because we did not have a dedicated assistant editor that, it has been a rough couple of weeks on the technical side. So
was it largely about logging and knowing where all the pieces were or how they fit together? What's the practical mess?
I'd have to get into this. Specifically is files, audio files, or volunteer director of photography, running all the cameras and doing the audio, and they're going to miss stuff. Not all the audio files are in folders with the date. So we have audio files with the same name. We have video files with the same name. We have video files loaded in as original media when they were really proxies, that kind of stuff. So it's not just one area. It's a lot of different issues. Libraries shared between editors and Final Cut, but shared incorrectly. And it's been very difficult.
Yeah. I'm facing that with my narration work right now. I was not as strict when I started doing it in terms of managing my metadata and making sure that every time I sat down, I had the metadata strings right. And I'm doing the same problem. I'm fighting myself in the assembly and post process simply because I hadn't schooled myself to be strict about tagging everything correctly. When you do it, it is so much easier. And when you don't, it is a nightmare. So, boy, I tell you, if I was in film school, I would I'd take every metadata class they had and just understand what to tell people to do to make everything so much easier on the back end.
That's
next question.
The assistant editor's job. An assistant editor is a good one that will save your life. It is
Absolutely.
It is an unsung job, but the good ones are amazing.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Let's go to the next question.
Next one in from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. And Peter asks, are you pressured to edit things? And secondly, do you edit things in a show based on experience with the producers, etc.?
What do you mean pressured to edit things? That I don't follow.
I wonder if Peter's wondering if people up the chain push you into directions to make a decision.
Yeah, it's their show.
Yeah.
My name is not, I'm not the creator of a show. I'm not, again, in film, it's going to be the director, and TV is usually the producer. It's their baby. And your job is to help them find their vision and put their vision on screen. And you can make suggestions, and you can make comments, and you can guide, and you can cajole, and you can beg, but it's not your call in the end. So I've done plenty of things where, hey, I think this is a better way to do it. And I make my case, and they'll agree with me or they won't. And if they don't, I lose. It's not my project. I'm not the director or producer. I have to help them see their vision on screen. Maybe we'll do a screening and their version doesn't work and we'll then try mine. Or maybe their version works much better than mine. Or sometimes it ends up being a combination. But yeah, all the time you're going to do stuff you disagree with. You have to.
Let's go to the next question.
Got one in here from Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies, and he asks, where would you tell an absolute beginner to start on the path of being an editor, software-wise?
Any software will do. It's time editing that matters. I'm not an Avid editor. I'm not a Final Cut. I'm an editor, and the tool, a race car driver is going to be able to drive multiple cars. You may need to get a little used to how the new car drives compared to your old car, but you know how to drive. So editing is a separate skill from knowing the software. Two completely different things. So as a beginner, read books, read interviews with editors. Find what kind of editing do you want to do. Find information from editors who do the same kind of work. If you want to be a YouTube editor, it's very different. You don't want to be reading Walter Murch stuff. I mean, it doesn't hurt. But YouTube editor for something in social media is going to be different. And just get footage. Shoot your own footage. And put it together over and over and over. Try to put the same footage together 4 different ways. See what you can do. It's just time in the chair and experimenting.
Michael, if you could snap your fingers and make the next project appear, what would it be like?
A really cool movie. I like a really cool indie film.
Is there a particular genre or a particular thing that really resonates with you best?
Going back to the De Palma, Terry Gilliam kind of stuff, a little bit weird, accessible. David Lynch is awesome. I'm not looking to do that. A little weird, very accessible, very unique and fun and interesting. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm lucky that I've worked on a lot of projects like that that I'm very proud of already. But I like stuff that's going to be a little challenging and a little interesting. I'm going to go back to something I said earlier as an example of this. For the horror film I just did, there's a moment. I don't want to give too much away. The trailer's out. The movie doesn't come out for a few weeks. I said I cut some scenes wrong, or I missed what the director was going for. There's a scene where one of our characters is walking through the dark woods and there's some weird stuff going on around her. And I cut it it worked. It was very straightforward. And this is from editing scenes as they come in. Most movies are not shot chronologically. So once I have the first build and I send it to the director, he calls me, goes, so before the scene happens, about 2 or 3 scenes earlier, she takes some drugs. Imagine they're kicking in by the time this scene happens. That's all he had to say. I'm like, oh, now I know what you're going for. I completely recut the scene, and in a very different way. So a little off topic on the question there, but that's the kind of stuff I want to work on, where there's something interesting in there.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's off topic at all. It's that ability to say, I was heading down a path I thought made sense, but now that I have more information based on the content that I'm working on, there needs to be a different approach to this. And
I like to think, had I, finished the first cut, you watch down, that idea will come to you on your own. Hopefully you'll see it in context. Now I see your first cut is quick. You're trying to keep up with the shooting, with the dailies, and you only have maybe a few days after their last day of shooting to present a cut to the director. So you're going full speed at that point. You can't watch it in context. But I hope I get another project where there's some cool moments like that.
Lovely. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Michael, for coming and spending your hour with us. We truly appreciate it. This is what we like to do, particularly on our Thursday show where we concentrate on video. We want to get all the different disciplines in. And for those of you who have not gotten a chance to ask questions to a working Hollywood editor who does this day in and day out, this is the reality of what it's like. You can see how much creativity goes into it and what are the important things that in terms of behavioral and the rest of those things you can do to maybe get this seat for yourself in some point way down the road. Michael, thank you so much. As always, we're going to wrap things up by going through our Tuluk traversal. It doesn't look like I have. Do I have the stats? Yes, I do. So if you were to go and ask all the people that we've talked to today in terms of our questions to weigh in on this, you would have had to travel 78,000 miles today. That's 125,000 kilometers. And for those of you who are on Reddit, that's 615 million bananas per scale. We'll see you tomorrow with another edition of Office Hours. That was fun, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
I hope it was worth getting up at the crack of dawn.
I loved it. I just wish it was 2 hours later.
Yeah, I know. Think of how much more productive your morning's going to be now that we've gotten...
No, now I have to take a nap.
This is awesome. I hope I'll see you the next time I'm in Los Angeles.
Sounds good, Bill. Good meeting you guys.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Hey, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.